I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show today. My name is Paul. You found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. This is Conduit News. And my goodness, it is the 4th of December. I want to remind everybody, I'm encouraging everybody throughout this Christmas season to find a General Waverly for yourself. That's right, a General Waverly. You guys know what I'm talking about. From White Christmas, they do all of that stuff for their old general and in the World War II. If you go, first of all, you have to, if you understand this, you have to watch for yourself. You have to watch White Christmas in order to understand this. And then I just want everyone to go find a General Waverly in their life and do something nice for them for the Christmas holiday, for the Christmas season. And really, all it really has to be is just somebody that did a lot for you, or maybe got you through a difficult time in your life, or just somebody you wanted to say thanks to. You've always thought about it. You think about it maybe often. You don't ever thank them for what they did for you. So just find for yourself a General Waverly and thank him. Do something nice for him or her. Show them how much you care for them and what they did for you. That's what I'm encouraging people to do. But hey, you have to watch the movie White Christmas in order to get what I'm saying, if you've never seen it. Many of you out there have. Now, for those of you in my generation, okay, a lot of us maybe haven't seen it as much. You have to ignore how freakishly skinny that one actress is. I'm telling you, no, not Rosemary Clooney. It's the other one. I can't remember her name. I looked her up and everything. That actress was deathly thin, and she's a fantastic dancer. But if you look up every one of her costumes, her neck is covered. Even the scene when she's in her pajamas, she's got her neck covered. Everything's a turtleneck. And if you Google it, the internet claims that it's because she was dealing with an eating disorder. So you really have to get over that. It's like in almost every scene, you're like, I cannot believe how thin this woman was. Like you could never have her size in a movie today, because people would be, the social justice warriors would be, definitely be claiming she's a victim of Hollywood, and maybe she was. I don't know. All right, so find your General Waverly though. ignore how skinny that girl is. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. You can sound off this morning on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Conduit News. John Brummett from the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, he's a big liberal, big progressive guy. He he wrote today about the impeachment process. It's a piece entitled A Delicate Balancing Act or something like that. At the end of his piece, I saw his Twitter from yesterday where he retweeted the Talk Business and Politics story where they interviewed the governor. They interviewed the governor's son about China. This is what John Brummett said. Joe, go ahead and throw this up on the screen for folks. John Brummett tweeting, the Hutchinsons as the Bidens, though I guess you could say at least Asa 111 is a lawyer. Solid report from Talk Business/Politics. Now that's interesting. You have a columnist for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette tipping the hat Talk Business and Politics. Now, I have to say, I think the headline, the Talk Business and Politics story, if you go to it, as of this morning, has 0 comments on it. Is that not odd? And I think it's because the headline is benign. Governor, son, discuss legal work done for Chinese firms in Arkansas. The headline doesn't convey the scandal of the story. You know what I mean? At all. Not nearly like the Conduit for Action article does, which references the Bidens and the Ukraine and Asa and China. And so you immediately know, okay, so they're comparing something that Asa is allegedly doing with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. That's what but I mean here, how does a story of this magnitude? And you go read the statements from the governor and his son, and they're definitely defensive, and they're lengthy explanations. You know what I mean? If there was nothing here, if there's nothing to see here, it would be easy explanation. But they're very lengthy, complicated explanations. I just don't know why the Talk Business and Politics story has 0 comments. Looks like nobody. Let me click on it real quick, because don't they have like a view counter or something on there? Let me see how many people viewed this. You'd think it'd be a lot of politicos. It's got 0 shares. They got a share counter. So right now it says 0 people have shared this, but it's been viewed 886 times. Okay, so it does have some eyes on it, so that's good, but it hasn't been shared. And I'm just wondering if it's because of this headline. Governor, son, discuss legal work done for Chinese firms in Arkansas. I mean, if you don't know what has been going on, then how does that headline make you want to read the story? Anyway, so John Brummett tweets, the Hutchinsons as the Bidens, though I guess you could say at least Asa 111 is a lawyer. Solid report from Talk Business and Politics. And, of course, Arkansas Blog responds that Hunter Biden is a lawyer as well. Hunter Biden is a lawyer as well. Yeah, if this was, in many ways, what's going on with the governor's law firm and these Chinese companies, in many ways, it's worse. If for example, if Hunter Biden didn't get put on that board, that Burisma board, and making $80,000 a month with no experience, if that hadn't happened, and instead the Ukraine was using Hunter Biden's law firm, but it was actually the Joe Biden Law Group, and the managing partner was Hunter Biden, as Joe Biden was vice president, but it had Joe Biden's name on the law firm, and he was listed as the founder. I mean, if that is what had happened internationally with Joe and Hunter Biden, there would be like that would be way worse for them, wouldn't it? Maybe I'm wrong. You think they'd get the same as well? I divested from the law firm, and I can't control it, and he's always had these Ukrainian connections, and always have been an international lawyer, and he's the only one in the United States that has the expertise as an attorney. Very few people could have that expertise to do business with the Ukraine. You think those explanations would suffice? I think not. Anyway, so John Brummett, at least acknowledging this, still waiting on the Arkansas Democrat Gazette to actually pen a piece about this, wondering if they ever will. We do have a headline. Michael Wickline writing today that the state revenue for November has set a record. So we have more record revenue coming in from the people to the government, $515 million. And they're saying this is encouraging. But, I mean, how many more months of record revenue are we going to have? You know what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, is it? You say, well, it's a good thing. Well, it is, but, I mean, we've also raised taxes on everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, we've raised a bunch of taxes. The internet sales tax was a big one. And we have John Shellnut here, the guy from I think he's from DFNA, and he's let's see, what is he anyway, he's the guy that lets you know what's going on. He was asked about this situation with the internet sales tax. It's buried in this article. let's see here. He said the increased sales and use tax collections are related to the state's economy, the low unemployment rate, and consumer confidence. Talks about the motor fuel vehicle. Hang on one second. Down here, I think it's in the. Is it right here? No, it's like towards the. Yeah. Down in motor vehicle, internet sales tax. Oh yeah, here we go. Asked about sales tax revenue from out-of-state internet retailers, he said, quote, "It is probably running above our estimate, but we don't have a good number for it." So once again, the government is publicly saying that they have no idea to measure how much more money is coming from the people because of the internet sales tax. They have no way to know. Some of these numbers real quick. A $19.2 million or 8.5% increase in individual income tax collections from a year ago to $244.4 million, which is above the state's forecast by $4.4 million or 1.8%. Individual withholdings are the largest category of individual income tax collections. Withholdings increased by $17.9 million or 8.5% in November over the same month a year ago to $229.3 million and exceeded the forecast by $3.4 million. $9.1 million or 4.5% increase in sales and use tax collections from a year ago to $214 million, which beat the forecast by $3.2 million or 1.5%. Now, I do want to point out here that we increase the minimum wage. What a lot of people don't understand is we have these habitual minimum wage increases because we keep voting for it. They keep getting it on the ballot, and the people vote for it. People don't understand that one of the reasons the government loves the minimum wage increase is not because they really believe it's going to. The minimum wage actually hurts the very people it claims to help. We've talked about this many, many times. It hurts small business owners. It means that you've got to have somebody with even more developed skills before they come work for you before it's profitable. So it actually hurts lower income people that would like to get a job making a very little so the business owner can afford to teach them the skill. Once they learn the skill, then they're profitable, then they can make more money, right? And if the business owner they're working for doesn't want to pay them that, they've now learned a skill, and they can go use that skill somebody else's. It could be basic skills like just showing up to work on time and passing a drug test. Okay. But so we've talked about that, but the reason the government loves the minimum wage is because their tax receipts go up. I mean, that's something that doesn't need to be lost here. We haven't talked about this in a while, but government loves the minimum wage increase because it means that they're now taxing, your wages are now higher, and so the taxes that you pay are now higher as well. Yeah, no more is going out for them. So, and then of course rent increases, cost of living, food, everything, the inflation, everything tends to kind of eventually level itself out. And the minimum wage increase is just ridiculous. I mean, one day the minimum wage, the government's telling you what you must contract your labor for. You can't go below this amount, which is insulting if you think about it. It's not freedom. But you're not more prosperous because the government decreed you have to be paid more. And I know it's like, well, what do you mean? Well, prosperity is based off of what we produce. And the money is just a means of keeping up with the exchange of how many homes were built, how many cars were sold, how many services or products were sold for a profit. And then you keep up with that, the rate of exchange, what people are actually using and getting and that sort of thing with money. And so that day, where it clicks over and it's now midnight and it's the next day and now minimum wage is now higher. You're no more prosperous than you were. Society is no more prosperous than you are. Prosperity comes from work ethic and access to resources. Period. And but see, that argument is complex. It's hard to get across. Business owners tend to understand it, but people, handing a bag of food out a fast food window unfortunately, not all of them, but a lot of people don't understand that. The idea that you think that handing a bag of food out of a fast food window is like a valuable skill when it's something that most people can do. And this is hard because people want to vote themselves more money. Benjamin Franklin talked about this, right? When the people realize they can vote themselves more money or government largesse, then that'll be the end. And we've been wrestling with this back and forth. I thought that said that it was 29 after, but it's only 20 after. I was like, oh no, let's go ahead and take a break. Anyway, I've got an interesting twist on this internet sales tax thing. The idea that the government's saying we can't know how much money we're getting from the internet sales tax that we just passed, that went into effect in July. I've got another question about that to give you some perspective. Don't go anywhere. Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us today. Telephone number again, 870-275-9799. Here's my question. Joe, see if you can follow this with me. What does God need with a starship? This is a quote from the movie Star Trek V, where Captain Kirk is on this planet where there's this god, or they think he's a god, and he needs the starship so that he can, I don't know, I can't remember, so he can travel across the stars and, bring his goodness to everybody or whatever. I can't remember. But Captain Kirk's the only one who's like steps forward and is like, wait a second, why do you need my ship? What does God need with the starship? What does God need with the starship? Anyway, what does Walmart need the Asa Hutchinson Law Group for? Walmart is a billion-dollar company many times over. They're like the largest company in the world. What do they need? They have teams. They have an entire legal department. Why would Walmart need the Asa Hutchinson Law Group? So if you go to the website, the Asa Hutchinson Law Group website, Walmart's one of the, if we click on clients, Walmart's listed as a client, along with the Communist Chinese clients, but Walmart's there as well. What does Walmart need with the Asa Hutchinson Law Group? So, in light of the record tax revenue that we have, and in light of the fact that the government won't give us the number on how much more money is coming from the people because of the internet sales tax, it dawned on me that Walmart, for the last 2 years, has been a big proponent of the internet sales tax because they are a brick and mortar store, right? Think about this. Look, I know it's all circumstantial, but it just doesn't look very good, does it? Maybe it has more to do with visas. I don't know. Maybe that's what they're going to say. This is a story from John Moritz, April 5th of this year, when the House was voting on the internet sales tax. Some companies, including internet retail giant Amazon, have already begun remitting taxes to the state without direct orders from the legislator to do so. Walmart stores, based in Bentonville, had supported earlier attempts to force online companies to collect sales tax. The House voted 68-20. Representative Josh Miller of Heber Springs said this: "For a so-called conservative Republican legislature, we've taxed the crap out of the state of Arkansas. When is it going to stop?" He obviously voted against the measure. So I just kind of thinking, wow, that's interesting that you have a situation where Walmart, all the way back in 2017, they were backing. Remember, convicted felon Jake Files, the senator who was the head of the Revenue and Tax Committee in the Senate, was running the internet sales tax bill in 2017. Now, this bill failed. They couldn't get it, eventually. And Dan Douglas, remember all that? He was upset too. He was the guy in the House running it. They couldn't get it through. But I mean, back in 2017, as I was scurrying around the Marble Palace, everybody knew that this was Walmart's bill. Walmart wanted to get this before the Supreme Court. They had purposely written an unconstitutional bill, and they wanted this to be the test case, even though there was already one that was in the pipeline, and that one from South Dakota did eventually make it before the Supreme Court, and that's when the Supreme Court did say that, our Arkansas can make somebody out of state pay them taxes. That's what it says, which is crazy to me. But anyway, that's where we are. And so that's one of the reasons why the current version did pass earlier this year. And it's one of the reasons why we're now paying more money to the government than we were. But again, hindsight is 20/20. And the further you get away from what just happened, you start to ask questions. And I'm starting to look at all of these clients on this website just because I want to know who they are. And the governor's law firm lists Walmart as a client. I'm just wanting to know why. There's no way I can know. It's a private law firm, so I can't, there's no sort of FOIA or anything that can be done with that. But I would just like to know, what does God need with the Starship? Why would Walmart need the governor's law firm to do business? And all this has been out there in plain sight. Like, that's the other thing. It's all just been there. And you really need to look at this other company, iStation, as well, another client on the governor's law firm's website from Dallas, Texas, that has a contract with the Department of Education for many millions of dollars. And the more I look into that, the more questions I have, and I'll have more on that in the days to come, by the way. Somebody writing, that was Spock's brother. Yeah, in the Star Trek 5, well, yeah, that was one with Spock's brother. What is his name? Was it Cybok or something? I think so. Anyway, but I don't think Cybok's brother turned into the godlike creature that they found on a planet. I think they were two separate things. But it was the creepy one where it's like, let me take your pain away, and he had some ability to take your pain away. Show me your pain. Anyway, that is the one that begins with Kirk, climbing up a sheer mountain and falling off, and then you got the rocket boots. Pretty sure that's it. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to be back here in just a moment. I want to introduce you to an author that was tweeted about by President Donald Trump. His name is Doug Weed. He's author of the book Inside Trump's White House, The Real Story of His Presidency. Next hour, we're going to be talking again with Amity Slays. We're excited to have her back on the program about her new book. No, go anywhere.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
To advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Rui Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown ninefold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong Province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Rui, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Lee to my right, who is the founder of
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, thanks so much for being with us today. I want to introduce you to an author we have on the line. His name is Doug Weed, author of the book Inside Trump's White House, The Real Story of His Presidency. Doug, how are you this morning?
Hey, I'm doing great, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Now, did I hear that the president tweeted about this book, telling everybody to go get it?
He did. He tweeted 3 times.
Yeah.
So I was
he
very
tweeted,
humbled by that.
Great writer and historian Doug Weed has written a true, not fake news account of what's going on in Washington and the White House. His new book, Inside Trump's White House, is an incredible description of a very exciting and successful time in our country's history. Buy it. That's the President of the United States. So Doug, tell us, did you have inside access to write this book?
Oh, yes, I did. It was amazing. It took about a year or so before they decided to let me in. And, you know, they've been burned so many times by writers with these fake stories fueled anonymously. And so after about a year, they said, okay, come in. The president just opened the door. You can have anything you want. You can talk to anybody you want. So I started with the family. I did talk to the hostages. I talked to many variety of people, but I started with his family and with he himself and the family, and I just couldn't get out of the family. It was just too fascinating and interesting. But I did speak to some foreign ministers and Chief of Staff Mulvaney and some White House staff. but mostly the Trumps.
Wow. Man, I bet that is. I bet this book is incredible. Now, it was available November 26th, so I mean it's just out. I'm sure it would make a great Christmas present for folks. And you can find it on Amazon. We're actually, for the video audience, we're showing the Amazon page right now, Doug, to them. So, is it historic? I mean, is the Trump presidency? I mean, I know it's historic, but is he really changing things? I mean, I think he is, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think he's been the most impactful president since FDR. There's no question about it. You judge presidents on about 120 different criteria, but the economy dominates, and war and peace, and intelligence and communications. Communications, he's transformational with the digital media. We'll never go back from that. Every president will use it. In terms of intelligence, Donald Trump saw what every great economist in the world did not see. They were unanimous. And he turned around this economy. He proved them wrong. And he's the first president in 40 years not to have started a hot war somewhere. He hasn't invaded anybody. We always invade, Panama or Grenada or Bosnia or Libya or somewhere. He hasn't done that so far. We still may have a war with Iran. And the big one is the economy. I mean, Jimmy Carter's one of the most intelligent presidents we've ever had, but he's rated poorly because of the economy. So is George W. Bush, great warrior president. So what he has done to the economy is everything that every social engineer, Hubert Humphrey, LBJ, any of those people ever dreamed of for the poorest of the poor in America has come true under Donald Trump.
Wow. That's incredible. So the lofty ideals, the reason we had this program or that program. I mean, if you look at the unemployment rate, I mean, you look at what's going on with minority populations, black unemployment, the lowest it's ever been. I mean, to your point, Doug, it is historic.
It is historic, and think of this: there's 7 million unfilled jobs. That's the population of the state of Indiana. That's how vibrant this economy is. And all the other world's economies are suffering while we're just exploding. That's not an accident. That's not luck. And that's how you measure greatness. The gold standard for a president is peace and prosperity. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have. It's a shame that we have to lose it to understand and appreciate how valuable it is.
Well, and I know a lot of people have been saying for a long time, hey, we need a president that's a businessman. I think what we have here is a certain type of businessman because, his business is dependent on a thriving middle class. He was in the service industry. And so, I think that's the real reason we're seeing such, economic boom here is because he knows that we have to have a thriving middle class in order to go to some of these places and consume,
Yeah, boy, you've read my book. It's true from day one. That's the difference on everything. Take, for example, the hostages. He was horrified when he learned that this was America's shameful secret, that all these Americans were being held hostage around the world, and it had been kept silent by Republican and Democrat presidencies for 16 years with good intentions. The idea is if it becomes highly publicized, it increases the value of the hostage. More hostages will be taken. It'll be harder to get them free. That was the rationale. But the government bullied news media. You can't report about this. They bullied the families. If you try to get your loved one home on your own, we won't help you anymore. And they didn't keep them informed. And when Trump got in there, he was just horrified. But as you point out, Trump, the businessman, he said, I'll get him back. I'll get him back. He started to squeeze those countries. Erdogan made fun of him. Erdogan of Turkey took a tour of his country, gave speeches mocking Trump. He'd never let Andrew Brunson go home, the American pastor who was held hostage. And Trump took him right off the cliff. Trump just grabbed him and said, let's go, let's jump, here we go. And he practically destroyed the Turkish economy. And Erdogan said, you can have it, go, get out of here. We don't want you. You can take the hostage home. So that's, as you point out, that's a businessman. He sees things that the politicians couldn't see, and he's doing that in foreign policy. He's doing it everywhere.
We're talking with Doug Weed. He's the author of the book Inside Trump's White House, The Real Story of His Presidency. It's recommended by the president to read. What does never complains and never explains mean?
Well, you see in his personality and Trump's personality, and I interview him a lot in the book, and he's very funny, by the way. I guess you know that. But that was a famous quote of Disraeli, the Prime Minister of England. A lot of people compare Trump to Andrew Jackson, and they compare him to Disraeli, who was actually Jewish, had no constituency whatsoever, but became a popular Prime Minister of Britain based on results, based on numbers, what he produced. So that's why some comparing Trump to Disraeli. But that was his famous quote: "Never explain, never complain, never explain." And it hurts Trump. It's, in my opinion, it's one of his strengths, but one of his weaknesses. So when things go sour, the media starts says, "Oh, you lied, you said this, but then you said this, so that's a lie." He won't explain it. He won't get out there and say, "Well, that's because when I said this, I didn't know that." And he doesn't explain. He just goes on, and that leaves him vulnerable. But it also has been one of his strengths. He doesn't look back. He just keeps plowing ahead forward.
Hey, that's interesting. Yeah, because I have explained for him on this program. You know what I mean? Like when they say this, but I've never actually asked myself. I wonder why he's not more. Why doesn't he go out there and explain much? And I think part of the reason is, Doug, and you tell me if I'm wrong here. Forever the media is essentially the DJ. They set the beat, right? And you got to dance. So if the media's outraged, they're almost like clergy, right? They can condemn you or absolve you. It's an ever-rotating scale. But the president, maybe he doesn't explain because he just refuses to let them set the beat. He's going to dance to his own beat.
Well, that's part of it, and part of it, of course, is the media is owned by the big monopolies that he's breaking up, and this is the story that's untold. But we have in this country huge monopolies. They're created by regulation. So they pass all these regulations. They partner with special interest groups, so the special interest groups just love them, and they promote this special interest, whatever it may be. Often it's a good thing. And they get these regulations passed, and that keeps you from starting a company to compete with the monopoly. And then after they've got their monopoly loaded with regulations, a Republican's elected or a Democrat's elected, there's a recession, and it doesn't matter which party, they pass what they call the stimulus bill. The last stimulus bill is 1,000 pages, the size of the Bible, and it's filled with deregulation. So basically, they go to these companies and say, "Oh, we're in a recession. You have to help us write this stimulus bill. What would help you create jobs?" So all the regulations that keep you from starting a business are now these big monopolies are exempted from them under the stimulus bill, so they can hire people and grow. And it's a racket. And then it's multinational. Their owners are half European, and they own the media, and they own the companies that sponsor the media. And they don't want it disrupted. So here comes Donald Trump. He's deregulating. He's busting all these regulations so that small businesses can come back and compete. Boeing used to be the only competitor on some of these bids. Now 40 other companies are competing with Boeing, and they don't like it. So the media hates him. He's stealing their game. He's messing up their game. He's breaking the dishes.
Wow, that is certainly news here this morning. I mean, to quantify that is really, really interesting to me. Once again, folks, we're talking with Doug Weed, the new book. It's out now, Inside Trump's White House. You should check it out. Now, I understand, Doug, you just said, you interviewed the president many times. You interviewed Chief of Staff Mulvaney, Jared and Ivanka. What's Donald Trump Jr. like, though? You interviewed him as well.
Yes, he's so much fun. He's no holds barred. He's a Donald Trump himself. It's so interesting to me that the family, most families, there's a smart one and a dumb one and a sloppy one and a neat one and a poor one and a rich one. But these Trumps, every single one of them are dynamic personalities, and Don is certainly that too. He's no holds barred. And Eric and Tiffany, what a hoot! I'm the only person who's interviewed Tiffany since her father became president. She's just filled. She has the funniest stories. They need to go to Buckingham Palace for that big dinner. They've all got their gowns on and their tuxedos on, and they can't get a motorcade, and they can't get there. So they rent a bus, van, the kind that takes you to your Avis rental car at the airport. And they all pile in to Trump, and they say, "Take us to Buckingham Palace."
That's fantastic. Well, Doug, hey, I really appreciate you coming on the program, spending some time with us this morning. And best of luck to you. Thank you for coming on, and I just want to encourage everybody to go out and get your book.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that very much.
All righty. Nice to meet you, sir. Appreciate it. Folks, we're going to make a YouTube video of this, put it up at conduitnews.com and the YouTube channel. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel Conduit News and click the little bell to receive notifications. We're going to reset here. Be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Sun Paper of Shandong Province in China. I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong Province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong Province. I met with Chairman Lee. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South Arkansas.
Bob Maloney here with a developing story from ASA News The Parrot. China is coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator.
On behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphia. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope, if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future, and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
870-275-9799 is the telephone number if you want to contribute to the conversation. Coming up at the top of the next hour, we're going to be talking with Larry Walker from Citizens for a Better Pope County. Thought it'd be a good idea to have a casino update from Larry, and it's always great to talk to him. The bottom of the next hour, we're going to be once again, because see, when we interviewed Amity Schlaze, she's a very accomplished author. She's written many, many books. The Forgotten Man. She's got one called The Great Society that's out. It was out November 26th as well, right? She's got this one book called The Forgotten Man, A New History of the Great Depression. She's got one called Coolidge, if you want to know about Calvin Coolidge, which I'm a huge Coolidge fan. But her latest is Great Society, A New History. So we've already done one interview with her on this, but it was at least a month or two before the book came out. It might have been in the summer. And we were actually, I think, her first interview on the book because, who does press that early? So we reached back out to Amity. We wanted to have her back on, and so she will be back with us discussing this other book, which, the great Christmas gifts. We just talked to Doug Weed, who is a recommended read by the president, his book on the Trump White House. And now we're at a show where, we're going to also be talking with Amity Schlaze. So we're really excited to talk to her once again about this book. So let me give you a little local news here. There was a vote in the Jonesboro City Council the other day to rename a street for Martin Luther King Jr. Now, for those of you who don't know, who are listening and you kind of haven't been keeping up with all of this, there have been people that wanted to name this street or that street after Martin Luther King, and they weren't able to get it done. And honestly, it has led to a lot of virtue signaling from a lot of people, But at the same time, there are members of the community that think that a street should be renamed Martin Luther King Jr. And there are those, for whatever reason, it is obvious to me that it means a lot to them. For whatever reason, and we could go into the logic behind it and all that other stuff, that's all, but there are people who believe that not having a street named Martin Luther King Jr. is somehow an affront to his message by not having one, as if it's like some purposeful act of ignorance or maybe even racism. I know this is all speculative. I don't know what's in every person's head that wants to rename a street. So the Jonesboro City Council, in a 9-3 vote on Monday, voted to rename Commerce Drive and future additions after King. Commerce Drive in the Jonesboro area is likely going to be a new bypass, a new road, if you will. So it passed 9-3. The city council, this is in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette this morning reporting on this. The city council created a Unity Coalition Advisory Committee in June and gave the group the task of finding a way to honor Dr. King, and this is what their decision was. That decision, though, has angered some members of the Unity Coalition, a lady by the name of Lisa Melton, who's a member of the local Craighead County chapter of the NAACP, She said in a later meeting that she had lost all respect for the council and accused members of backroom dealings. Quote, I was angry and ashamed. I carry the guilt of descending from white power structure that at minimum allowed it to happen and benefit from that structure. I lost my temper. And maybe she wanted the. I'm assuming maybe she wanted the street somewhere else, or I don't know. But yeah, so that's an interesting statement, isn't it? It's almost like we have to rename a street Martin Luther King Jr. to prove we're not racist. Which if that's the motivation, because what she's saying here, I carry the guilt of descending from white power. If that's why you think you need to rename a street, I'm out. I'm done. Like I don't get behind this this whole, this whole white privilege, and because once you get to white privilege, then you're gonna have. It's only a matter of time before like the trans community starts accusing the gays of having gay privilege because they've been more accepted for longer periods of time than the trans community. It's only a matter of time. It's you just can't go down. But anyway, so maybe some people are wanting to rename a street because they feel guilty about the fact that we had slavery in this country, or we didn't have civil rights in this country before Martin Luther King. We are one of the only countries I know that's ever fought a civil war over an issue like that. We never get any credit for that, by the way. Like, no one gives credit the fact that we ended the practice of slavery. We keep going here because here's the reason why. This is a reason why a lot of people. Well, this argument makes a lot more sense to me than it would maybe make to some other people as to why maybe you don't do it, right? So Matt Elam is the general manager of Silver Moon Trailers, and he was kind of upset. He said, quote, they changed the original proposal of the Memorial Highway 2 weeks ago during the holidays. Then they changed the date of the meeting from Tuesday to Monday, and then they voted to forego the second and third readings. It was odd. It feels rushed. Elam said the decision to rename Commerce Drive creates an unnecessary financial hardship for business owners in the area. He estimated that the cost of the name change will rise to thousands of dollars for business owners. Quote, this is just an actual cost. This is not talking about the potential loss of business because it takes almost 3 years for Google Maps to update streets. I have had this business for 23 years, and I spent over $250,000 in those 23 years advertising his address, 1802 Commerce Drive. Then, of course, the president of the local chapter of the NAACP said she wanted to instill some clarity from the black community, which feels strongly about the street naming issue. Quote, Dr. King fought for the freedom of all people, but if you were born free, then his legacy doesn't mean the same to you as it does for me and those of us who happen to be born black. Okay, so if you were born black, then you're not born free? I mean, this is 2019. Come on. Everyone in this country right now is born free. Come on, everybody's born free. Well, maybe not everybody. Most of the people. Well, you know what I mean. In America, like this idea that listen. That's just strange to me. Craighead County chapter of the NAACP, thank you for your prayers. It's been an emotional struggle. Tell me what you guys think about this. Joe, what were you trying to say?
If you are alive today in America, and you were born in America,
yeah, exactly.
You were born free.
Yeah. Or
you were born free. You were not born a slave.
Enslaved.
You were not born in slavery to somebody.
In government institutionalized legal slavery.
Yeah. There is no person.
So I mean, if that's what's being reported in the Gazette article, like, was the motivation to change the name to prove a negative, to prove that we're not racist? Is that what it was? Again, I'm sure it means a lot to a lot of people. Honest questions here.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
In Arkansas.
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Lee and I met yesterday. Chairman Lee indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas, and also to talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leaders stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea. Today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands. China's aggression was on display this week when a Chinese naval vessel came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur as it conducted freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, forcing our ship to quickly maneuver to avoid collision. Despite such reckless harassment, the United States Navy will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows and our national interests demand. We will not be intimidated, and we will not stand down.
And we'll be calling on multiple prospects in China, as well as continuing our relationship with Sun Paper in Shandong Province.
In recent years, China has taken a sharp U-turn toward control and oppression of its own people. Today, China has built an unparalleled surveillance state, and it's growing more expansive and intrusive.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hour number 2, welcome back to the show, 870-275-9799. We're going to check in with Larry Walker from Citizens for a Better Pope County. Larry, how are you this morning?
I'm good, Paul. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, sir. We haven't talked in a while. Certainly, I think we hadn't talked in a couple weeks before Thanksgiving. And, I've been keeping up with some of the headlines about the casino and about the struggles that the county's going through in terms of, going back and forth here. So what can you tell us? Where are we today?
Well, it's still in the middle of a bunch of litigation. We filed our notice for appeal yesterday on our cases. So that will be coming up. That process takes a while. But we are filing our notice of appeal. The Gulfside group out of Mississippi, they're back and forth in the court, and that process is still ongoing. The judge in Pulaski County wanted to send that one back to Polk County again, but it is not able to be brought back here. So that one is on hold for a little while in Pulaski County.
Okay. Yeah, it does seem like it is kind of a mountain of litigation at this point. There also was, there was a lot of stuff kind of looming as well, like the ethics complaint. Of course, the Ethics Commission comes back with findings. What were your thoughts on that?
The findings were really interesting. I think those findings came back. They basically said the Ethics Commission is not doing anything. I think there's a little bit of a misnomer out there about what those complaints, what the findings said. That there's been a lot of talk. Well, it's complete exoneration. Well, I didn't read those findings that way. The way I read those findings, it came back and if you read them, they said that basically you were it was alleged that you did these things. Then it goes on to say we did the research and you did do these things. However, we're not going to follow up any further on these items because we didn't find that you had any personal gain out of these out of your actions. And so they said we're going to drop these complaints. And so that's kind of where it was at. I thought it was it was an interesting result of those findings.
I thought I understand, Ethics Commission basically kind of says, they're saying no harm, no foul, but there certainly were still there was obviously the appearance of maybe, some conflicts of interest here and there, and I think that's why it was filed in the first place. Are people still, you think the people of Pope County, if there was a vote held, you think they would, you think that people are still against this, or do you think people are starting to come around and be like, maybe we do need the casino?
No, not at all. I don't think people think we need a casino at all. I think where the people of Polk County are at is basically they feel like there is no hope. I think they've been told by their government officials, they've been told by everyone around them, hey, it's coming, you might as well get ready for it. And I think that they have gotten to a place they've lost hope in in the court system. They've lost hope in their public officials. They've lost hope, and they feel like it's going to be imposed upon them. And so I think it's more of a, we're going to brace ourselves and get ready for what's coming, as opposed to we're going to embrace it and welcome it here. The people of Polk County still certainly don't want it here, and if they had a straight-up-down vote about do you want one, do you not, it would definitely be a no, and I think it would probably be a stronger vote than it was before, because I think people are outraged by how things have happened around here, and they've seen the corruption that's involved with it.
So we still have the shadow of the secret meetings and the violation of the State Freedom of Information Act allegations out there. What's the status of those? What's happening with that?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised to see some of that stuff brought back. Honestly, people were outraged by that. I've talked to quite a few media about that, and I think the media statewide was pretty outraged by it.
Yeah.
Because goodness gracious, if there's no open meeting laws, if there's no accountability on FOIA, goodness gracious, what can we do as a public? How can the media do their job? You can't.
Yeah, and to your point, the state media, they clearly think that this was, that these were secret meetings, that they were in violation, of the Open Meetings, Act, and that's what's so frustrating here. And I just want to reiterate, I know we're kind of covering old ground here, Larry. We're talking with Larry Walker, Citizens for a Better Polk County. But the fact of the matter is, if you've got a group of folks, of the county, of the people that live in the county, they don't want a casino, but the casino now, is written into our Constitution, which was a ridiculous idea. And this is how you would expect a casino to happen. You know what I mean? With these kind of backroom deals and kind of straw polling when you're not supposed to do that. You know what I mean?
Right, and I think that's what the people are seeing is, my goodness, if this is how things are going to happen now, and there's not even a casino here in Polk County yet, what does that mean for our county in the future going forward once one's here? How, and then if there's no law, if there's no court, if there's nothing that's going to hold our government officials accountable, then what do we do? Say like with our quorum court officials, we have elections coming up. Right now, with elections being every 2 years, there is somewhat of a mechanism to hold those guys accountable, and that will elect new officials. But the state recently enacted for our county judges that they have 4-year terms now. And so for a county judge that's in place, you don't have an option to elect him out of here for 4 years, still 2022. And with county officials, say like with city officials, there's a recall mechanism in our statutes. Well, with the county judge, there is no recall mechanism.
Wow.
And so we extended their terms from 2 to 4 years, and I assume there wasn't a recall mechanism with 2 years, because by the time you do the recall, you're to the next vote.
Correct.
But by 4 years, with there not being a recall mechanism, there's no way to hold a county judge accountable. And so our laws really work against us. So I guess what I was saying with all that is that the people feel like if they can't elect somebody new in, if they can't do something like that, and then the courts aren't going to come behind them and support them, then what are they to do when an entity like this comes in and they can't do anything about the corruption that goes along with it? They can't hold officials accountable. They feel kind of helpless.
Yeah. You mentioned accountability. You mentioned, what we're talking about is justice. I feel like, and it kind of from the outside looking in, obviously I don't live in Pope County, but kind of just feels like everything's kind of up for sale. Not necessarily to say that an individual's taking money, but specifically to your point to the county judge there, he ran on an anti-casino platform. I've seen the quotes, so for him to basically flip-flop on that, and then now the people have no recourse.
Absolutely, and every one of those guys, all the quorum court officials and the county judge, every one of them ran on a very strong anti-casino platform, and within 2 months of their election, they were flip flopping on that. And the people did what we could do. We tried to call for a local election, and now you take it to a court of law, and the court tells you that, well, it's unconstitutional for the people of Polk County to hold an election. I mean, that just seems pretty anti-American, especially when our state constitution says that the people hold the right of referendum on any item that our quorum court does. And that's what we called for, was a referendum. And now we have people saying that, well, even though the Constitution says you have a right of referendum, we're telling you that the Constitution is wrong, and you don't have that right. That's pretty absurd.
Yeah, and if the final legal result is that when we added a casino into our constitutions, or 2 casinos, that it resulted in stripping away the right of referendum from the people. I mean, that's just so wrong. I mean, there's just such a huge can of worms, Larry, and I know you're right in the middle of it. And I just want, you mentioned at the beginning that people are kind of feeling hopeless. They just are kind of resigned to the fact there's nothing they can do. Let's just reject that. I mean, let's wait and see what happens, and let's pursue every legal avenue, and just kind of see where the chips fall, pun intended.
Yeah, absolutely. And to take it even a step farther, we've got a hearing on Monday where the county officials are coming after our group for legal fees, and claiming we filed a frivolous suit, and we cost the county money for doing this, and that we owe the county money for having litigation on this. And it's almost like they're trying to because according to statute, all they could get out of it would be $5,000. Well, the county's going to pay $5,000 to their attorneys just to have the litigation, just to come back and to file that claim, and to have their attorneys show up for a hearing. We requested that the hearing, that the judge just decide based on the motions that were made, and not have everybody come in, actually drive in for a hearing, because now, the county's going to have their attorney come in from Fort Smith. The Cherokee are going to have their attorneys come in from wherever they come in from, Little Rock, Fayetteville, those places. We're going to have our attorney come in from Fayetteville, and all these sides are going to have pay money for these guys to come in. They're going to have to pay money for these guys to draft the motions. And the county, that's who we approached the county with that, to say, hey, guys, why don't we just decide together that we're going to go to the judge and just ask him to decide on the motions without us actually having to come in? They rejected that. They said, no, we want you to come in and have this hearing in person. So the county is going to spend money for their attorneys to come down here. They're going to spend money for the motion and all this. And essentially, if the judge was to decide we owe them $5,000, all it's going to cost is essentially the cost of this hearing.
Wow.
And so really you ask yourself, well, what's the point of even doing that? Well, the point is they're just trying to rub our nose in it, and they're trying to get us to shut up. They're trying to get us to say, hey, we give up, and they're wanting us to, just to say, hey, guys, you were right, and come back, and that's, we're not going to do that. And it's just wrong that they would do that, that they would come back. That it's something that was decided on by our voters, by 70% of our voters, that our county officials chose to go against and to not fight for.
Yeah.
They chose to make that decision, and so we come back representing the people of Polk County. So by them doing something like this, it's not them just slapping us in the face. It's slapping 70% of the voters in the face.
Wow.
In doing this and just rubbing their faces in it, because they chose to go against the will of the voters, and to say to the people, we know how to better run our county than the people of Polk County do. Essentially, you guys, citizens, y'all work for us rather than county officials. Y'all work for the citizens.
Yeah.
So
they're kind of behaving. It's like they're kind of like a caged animal in a way by going after you guys like that. It just it's very petty, very, very petty. Larry Walker, appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much for giving us this update, and let me know if there's anything I can do to help.
Absolutely. No, next week we should have some more updates after that hearing. We'll have the notice of appeal is filed, like I said, on these other issues, then this hearing will be done next week, and the Gulf side case, maybe they'll have some answers back regarding their stalemate that they're in Little Rock. And so, where that case sits right now, I know you probably got to get on to the next segment, but the one place that they are at right now is their judge in Pulaski County essentially said, hey, I'm not going to expedite your hearing. You're going to get to the back of the line of the 650 cases that I have, and when I have time for it, we'll get to your case, which puts that in a really interesting position when the Racing Commission said we're not going to make any decisions until all circuit-level litigation is complete. And evidently, there's 650 other cases to go before the Gulfside case before they're heard at this point. So that's a real interesting situation in Pulaski County on this whole situation.
Yeah, putting everything in limbo, basically stalling. I saw an article where the judge is being asked to reconsider. So we'll wait and see on that. Larry, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Larry Walker, everybody. Citizens for a Better Pope County. Folks, we're going to take a break. We'll be back here in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Often with the help of U.S. technology.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
And we're back. Welcome. 870-275-9799. Okay, so it is with a sad heart that we have to announce, I mean, you've probably heard, but Kamala Harris is resigning from her campaign, not from office. She's ending her presidential campaign. She was once a front runner. Man, the trolls out there are hilarious. The Kamala Harris campaign once tweeted a photo of her as a little girl saying, the next president of the happy birthday to the next president of the United States. People have now retweeted that, commenting it, being like, yeah, you're not going to be president. Yeah, Hillary did do the same thing. Yeah. So anyway, Kamala Harris. Yeah, we call her Kamala Harris. It's an obscure Battlestar Galactica reference. But for those of you who love that show, by the way, one of the greatest scenes in Battlestar popped up in my YouTube channel the other day. Out of nowhere, the Adama maneuver, where he jumps into the atmosphere of New Caprica. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent here. The President of the United States is in, where is he? He's in Buckingham. He went to the NATO summit. That's right, and I think they went to Buckingham Palace the other day. I saw that, but he sat down with Emmanuel Macron of France, who said that NATO is being run, he made a negative comment about the president, brain dead, that it's being run in a brain dead way. Well, so then they sat down with each other, and the president was asked this question. Listen.
Mr. President, has France committed to step up when it comes to taking back foreign fighters in Syria?
Stop. Well, if you couldn't hear that, has the president, meaning has the French president, committed to taking back foreign fighters, meaning ISIS fighters that have been captured that came to Syria from France? Listen.
I haven't asked that to the president today. I have over the period of time. We have a tremendous amount of captured fighters, ISIS fighters over in Syria. And they're all under lock and key, but many are from France, many are from Germany, many are from UK. They're mostly from Europe. And some of the countries are agreeing. I have not spoken to the president about that. Would you like some nice ISIS fighters?
Look,
I can give them
if
to
you
you.
look at the situation,
You can take everyone you want.
Let's be serious. The very large number of fighters you have on the ground are ISIS fighters coming from Syria, from Iraq, and the region. It is true that you have foreign fighters coming from Europe, but this is a tiny minority of the overall problem we have in the region. And I think number one priority, because it's not yet finished, is to get rid of ISIS and these terrorist groups. This is our number one priority.
Terrorist groups.
And it's not yet done. I'm sorry to say that. You still have fighters in this region, in Syria and now in Iraq, and more and more. And the whole destabilization of the region makes the situation more difficult to fix the situation against ISIS. Second, some of these foreign fighters are being judged in Iraq because of the deeds precisely they acted in this very region. And we will have a case-by-case approach. We have a humanitarian approach for children, already organized, and we will have a case-by-case approach. But for me, the very first objective in the region is to finish war against ISIS. And don't make any mistake. Your number one problem are not the foreign fighters. This is the ISIS fighters in the region. And you have more and more of these fighters due to the situation today.
This is why he's a great politician, because that was one of the greatest non-answers I've ever heard. And that's okay.
Because sometimes
Stop. Wow. He's exactly right. I mean, when in the world have you ever seen somebody? I mean, that's just American president right there being real. You ask the man a direct question. Would you take back the fighters that are from France that we have captured? And he goes on to dispute whether or not the ISIS fighters from Europe are a big problem. He says the main problem is the situation on the ground right now. That's the main problem. He just doesn't answer the question.
And if you sit there and watch this video, you watch Trump the whole time while Macron's answering the
Macron
question.
is doing his best impression of Beto O'Rourke with his hands. Like he just keeps moving his hands.
Well, if you're watching Trump during the whole thing, you can see him just taking in every ounce of what he's saying.
He's just
sitting there just literally soaking it in. And I'm like, that's a good, that's a really good thing for the president to do, is to be able to, just a president in general, just be able to sit there and soak in and listen to what's being said in front of him, so that way he can give an answer. Yeah. And in this case, it was a comedy jab at him. It's like, this is why he's a good politician.
That was the greatest non-answer I've ever heard. And so when Trump says that, Macron, he actually keeps going because, and you can tell he's pretty upset that the president said that, but he's trying not to be. Watch the rest of it.
I have some temptation from the U.S. side, I don't say about President Trump, but could be the press, to say this is the European responsibility. I'm sorry to say that. We have some of our people, but if you don't look at the reality of the situation, that is number one, not to be ambiguous with these groups. This is why we started to discuss about our relations with Turkey. But I think any ambiguity with Turkey vis-à-vis these groups is detrimental to everybody for the situation on the ground.
France has actually taken back some fighters. But we have a lot of fighters. We captured a lot of people. And we have captured 100% of the caliphate, but you know that means that it's still, they keep going and going. We sent a small contingent in, and we wiped out another portion of ISIS. We don't want to happen, to me, what happened with President Obama, where it reformed, and then it became stronger than it was in the first place. So we don't want that to happen.
That's the president at the NATO summit. Clearly ideological differences with what the problem is. Clearly ideological differences in terms of what the situation on the ground actually is. So, anyway. Hey, folks, when we come back, we're going to be talking with author Amity Shlaes. She'll be back with us talking about her new book, that is now out since the last time we interviewed. It's called Great Society, A New History. We'll be back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
And when it comes to religious freedom, a new wave of persecution is crashing down on Chinese Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims. Last month, Beijing shut down one of China's largest underground churches. Across the country, authorities are tearing down crosses, burning Bibles, and imprisoning believers. And Beijing has now reached a deal with the Vatican that gives the avowedly atheist Communist Party a direct role in appointing Catholic bishops. For China's Christians, these are desperate times.
So, do you like him as a candidate?
I think he's brought a lot to the table. It's not my message. I worry about the party in terms of expanding our base and what the message does to our recruitment of Hispanics, outreach to minorities. And so you've got to worry about the fall election and whether this is a message that's going to carry in Michigan, Ohio, and Florida, and those states that we need to carry.
The American people deserve to know. In response to the strong stand that President Trump has taken, Beijing is pursuing a comprehensive and coordinated campaign to undermine support for the president, our agenda, and our nation's most cherished ideals.
I think you've got to listen to what he says and how he conducts himself. And I don't know that he would be that different from what he is now in negotiating with Vladimir Putin. So,
you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a good thing. We need people who, in the presidency, that understand how the world works, understands that there's a time for bluster and there's a time for reason.
The Chinese Communist Party is rewarding or coercing.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us. Telephone number 870-275-9799 if you want to give us a phone call, or you can give us a text message. So the first time that we told you about this book, this new book called Great Society, A New History by author Amity Shlaes, it wasn't available to purchase. It is now available to purchase. It came out November 26th. Everyone's doing their Christmas shopping. And so we wanted to have her back on to talk about this book. She's on the line right now. Amity, welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yes, I'm so glad that you could spend some time with us this morning. So we've talked about your other books. You're a New York Times bestselling author. You've written about The Forgotten Man. You've written about Calvin Coolidge. By the way, the Conduit founders have recently visited the Calvin Coolidge Center in Washington, D.C., and I guess it's the Coolidge House. And, Calvin Coolidge, his principles are like right down the line of what our principles are. And so your book about Calvin Coolidge is also an excellent read. So what can you tell us, Amity, about how this book so far is being received? Your new book, Great Society.
The current book is called Great Society, and this morning the New York Times called it deeply flawed. So let's start with that.
Okay. The New York Times calls it deeply flawed. So what? That's got to be a good thing, actually. That probably means that it's completely 100% accurate.
Well, I'm friendly to the New York Times because they also excerpted the book. But that's an example. That is, they printed part of the book in their newspaper, and I'm very happy about that. And that part included, by the way, Wilbur Mills, at least in the first draft. So what it tells us is that the topic of the Great Society, this 1960s period when the government looked like it was supposed to do everything and that it would succeed, is controversial. And that is true. And what my book says is it was really nice for government to try to intervene, but most of what it did, threw a grenade or laid a time bomb for later. So the Great Society was not great. It was problematic, and therefore we shouldn't emulate it.
And so, and I know we've talked about before, oftentimes whatever the stated goal is, we're trying to tackle this problem, but you get negative results elsewhere, right? And so your book exposes that.
Well, that's right. I mean, Lyndon Johnson really wanted to do everything for poor people. He promised to cure poverty. He didn't say create a palliative. He said cure poverty. And we didn't cure poverty. In fact, poverty flattened out by our poverty data to about 1 in 10 families. And he thought he would end racial division by establishing what we know as affirmative action. Instead, that fostered racial division. It deepened the cracks between blacks and whites, which is sad. He thought that the federal government could make America better. Instead, he destroyed a good swath of old America, what you might call Tocqueville America, the America where communities took care of themselves. They didn't always do a perfect job, but often they did a better job than our history books allow. And imagine a great steamroller coming to your community, and we're kind of going to roll over, flatten what is in place in terms of local institutions or obviate them in order to introduce a federal office to save the people, which doesn't do that very well. So it was an important period, and we live. We think, Paul, that the New Deal of the 1930s shaped our modern life. That's not true to the extent that the Great Society of the 1960s shapes our modern life. Our spending on commitments we initiated in the Great Society is greater than our spending on commitments we initiated in the 1930s. I didn't know that, actually, but there's a chart in the back of the book that shows you when it happened, when those lines crisscrossed. So why, nowadays we talk about both parties. We talk about the importance of idealism and something different, and then here this book shows that idealism was painful. Even Medicare and Medicaid, which many people like, or extensions of Social Security, have comforted many of us in my generation. I'm turning 60, but we've left our children with a terrible debt because Medicare can't be paid for, and then after that, pretty soon Social Security goes into deficit, runs out of money as well, worse than deficit. So I was curious to find, Paul, the many parallels between the ambition and idealism of the early 60s and the ambition and idealism of our current period.
I'm very, very interested to hear about the fact that the new programs steamrolled the local ones. That to me is fascinating because it almost produces a current mentality where I've often speculated, has that made us less charitable than we used to be? Because a lot of times people are like, well, I pay taxes for that. Or it's kind of like the Ebenezer Scrooge line when he's asked for more money. Don't my taxes go to the workhouses and things like that? And so I wonder if that's also not a consequence from the Great Society?
Well, that I would say there were times, usually when you cut taxes, I mean, in history, I used to work at the Wall Street Journal, and we write these editorials about how charitable giving did fine when taxes are reduced overall. In fact, it sometimes does better because people have more money and they begin to assume more responsibility for their community. When people are fleeced, they're not in a giving mood. I already gave at the office to the federal government through my withholding. So that's enough now. The 2017 Act reduced the, as far as I understand it, and I'm going off the topic of my book, but reduced the number of taxpayers who might claim a deduction for charitable giving, and even perhaps reduce the tax savings in some cases. So, we have some evidence now that charitable contributions took a hit in 2018. Charity is the first impulse. It's the best impulse. It's not just because, private giving is holy. It's because we tend to give charity at home. And when you give at home, you know what you're giving to. And therefore, you make more rational decisions. You look at two hospitals or two churches and you say, which serves the people better? Well, in my opinion, the one on this street does, and the one on that street, I have my doubts, so I'm going to go to Street A and give to that institution. That discretion, that judgment of the people is gone in a federal program written by people in Washington who happen to know, by the way, neither institution, neither church, neither hospital. To them, churches in the town are all like far away, and it depends how they fill out an application for a grant or support. Or it depends whether the federal government is introducing a new institution to obviate both those old, respected institutions. There's one example in my book I want to talk about. It's in St. Louis. In St. Louis, there was a very healthy community chest and charitable community. St. Louis is a German-American community, and you could feel it. You could feel the old kind of German way of taking care of one's own. And when the urban renewal came, which was even before the Great Society, urban renewal steamrollered the downtown, including, by the way, a lot of institutions, and built giant high-rise project homes for poor people. So they lost their tenement, which might not have a good bathroom, but which was where they had chosen to live, and were moved almost without, much say for themselves. Here's into these tall buildings, which are called Pruitt-Igoe. And the federal government helped to pay for that, and the city fathers of St. Louis went along because, hey, the federal government was helping to pay, and therefore they would not have to raise taxes. Lawmakers at home don't always like to do that. And this tall set of buildings, Pruitt-Igoe, were a disaster because they didn't suit families. They had weird setups. For example, the elevator didn't stop on every floor, so you had to go up and down stairs, and that's where the gangs beat you up. There wasn't much commerce, which has a civilizing effect. There was no little store on the basement level. There was not even a really good playground. There was just kind of a vast, isolating park, and it became a nest for crime, Pruitt-Igoe. And eventually, at the end of the book, I tell the story all the way through. Two things happened. One was a local church decided, Father Shockley was his name, one of the churches that happened to remain standing after the bulldozers began to move people out, Father Shockley, into homes of their own. That is, help them buy a home. Some federal money came for that, but it was mostly a local effort. Local banks, local companies started to move people into homes of their own, that they got ownership, and the people were very happy. What happened then? They had to blow up Pruitt-Igoe, all of it, because it was such a tragedy, a danger, and an embarrassment. So that one housing project, and I'm sure you have some in your area too, is the emblem of what happens when a government comes and tells everyone it's doing good, particularly a faraway government. The architect, his name was Yamasaki, was a nice man. But he had to deal with all the rules the federal government gave him about the housing, including density rules, including where the elevators go, as I mentioned, including. And later, he made a remarkably frank confession makes you like him. He said, "I wish I had never built it. I had never built this Pruitt-Igro complex," which was the largest public housing in America. I should mention that. Wow. So we wish we had never done it. That is what you hear over and over again about the projects of the 1960s. And we're not even talking here about welfare and families and, various projects specific to your region.
We're talking with Amity Schlaze, author of the new book, A Great Society, A New History. Alan Greenspan says, Great Society is accurate history that reads like a novel covering the high hopes and catastrophic missteps of our well-meaning leaders. Amity, you mentioned that the New York Times today said that it was flawed. What specifically are they referring to?
Well, they say America should probably be spending more than we spent in the 1960s.
Okay.
More, and well, I didn't quite get all the logic, but the author, Benjamin Applebaum, was critical basically because, gosh, I don't want to misrepresent him, but because he thought that I didn't offer the generous possibility. What I say in the book is, how would America have looked if we'd left businesses more free to grow and community institutions more free to grow rather than telling them how it's all supposed to go? It might have been better. That's what I write. And he says, well, she doesn't ask, Amity doesn't ask, how would it have been if we had spent more? Well, if we had spent more, our economy wouldn't have grown. I think the real answer is we'd have fewer jobs now. Yeah. The Europe story is the story of how it would be if you spend more. And Europe had to draw back from its big social democratic spending. Europe unemployment is higher than our unemployment historically. And you see that, as the European social democracy grew and they continued the experiment that we didn't, their structural unemployment rose above ours. And that was a shock because for a long time it was lower because they were scrappy countries trying to recover from World War II and everybody worked.
You mentioned the family earlier. So what effect did the Great Society have on the family? Versus then versus now?
What we're talking about is when the federal government or government policy affects the family. And it actually commenced this effect of the federal government, the negative effect, with welfare, which was originally a great New Deal program, right? So in the 30s, welfare money went to the states and went to the individuals, and the states had a lot of say in what happened to welfare money, and they tended to want to give it to only single moms. If a dad is there, well, if you have a dad there, you don't deserve welfare money. So what welfare money did, and public housing made it worse, was encourage the moms who were poor to live alone in the public housing so they could get the welfare and maybe the housing benefit as well. So it created a huge marginal cost, to put it in economic terms, a huge marginal cost to staying together as a family, which is perverse. And there's also a film about Pruitt-Igro, which I recommend, where the people who lived there, who were children at the time, remember how they had to lie and pretend they had no dad, or the dads might even hide in the closet. And the children wondered, why is my mother lying? When you see your parent lie, time stops, and you say, why is this person who's so important to me, who I admire so much, lying? What fear would force a parent to lie? Because children know about parents' fear. And the answer was the mother needed the money. So this was continued, though they recognized the trouble, and their episodic mentions, intermittent mentions by Kennedy, Johnson administration, and so on. They knew that they didn't want to hurt the family, but they effectively did. And of course, this idea of illegitimate birth was part of that, and illegitimate birth only strengthened, both, by the way, at first among blacks, but also among whites. And we created the perpetual matriarchy, the perpetual dad-free family, and perpetual trouble with young men.
Gosh.
But I think our listeners know that already.
Yeah. Well, they
and I don't mean to offend anyone personally, but we perpetuated it through the great. A problem had already been there. we perpetuated and strengthened and institutionalized and codified.
Yeah, and to me, I think the Great Society, from my point of view, is really just a lot of socialistic tendencies. So, but now we have your book, your great book, and I think it, to me, is representing, evidence that socialism doesn't work. Do you agree with that?
Well, yes. The first sentence of the book is, why not socialism? Because that's part of the idealism, right? If you're a young person, you want to be logical, you want to go all the way. Why not socialism, Dad? Why not socialism, Mom? It sounds nice. I can't remember it doing anything bad. And this, in the book, it's a character who went to the federal government hoping to see the president, and getting in to talk to a rather high White House official, that was Sergeant Shriver, the poverty czar, with the idea, why not socialism? Sort of like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez today. It sounds nice. What's wrong with you government people? You're so corrupted and so compromising. How about a pure ideal? And what I show in the book is we didn't get communist socialism. These young socialists were, by and large, not traitors. They didn't report to Moscow. They were just wrong. And what we got was halfway socialism, sometimes known as social democracy, through the expansion of the federal government in the Great Society, and Nixon's in this too, by the way. And even halfway socialism, the evidence suggests, is too far. It's sort of like the discussion today. You say, well, I'm not wild about Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren because they like socialist ideas, and I don't, and I don't think they're good for my community. But heck, they might only get halfway. They might be, like that. And the truth is, halfway is indeed too far. So the halfway results of half socialism of the 60s give us some warnings. One example is guaranteed income. This is a very popular idea because giving people money sounds better than separating their families with perverse welfare rules. But giving people money, and the leader in that was Daniel Patrick Moynihan. You've heard that name before. He was not yet a senator, but he was a White House advisor to Richard Nixon. He said, let's give people money. Milton Friedman said that. What can be wrong with that? Well, what happens, he discovered when he tried to write the law, is at what point you stop giving the people money. Again, their marginal taxes go way up. They stop receiving. They start paying. It's the same problem as the earned income credit, and I know many of your listeners are familiar with that. So they're deterred from working more at, say, $30,000 a year or $20,000 a year, or in Moynihan's time, $10,000 a year, because they have to take a huge hit, and they lose their special housing or they lose their Medicaid, and therefore even paying people money, guaranteed income, has a perverse outcome.
Yeah, there's
just at a later point in the income scale.
Wow. The book, ladies
setting
and gentlemen.
Aside what,
no, go ahead.
Sorry,
No, go ahead.
To rant a lot, but setting aside what it does to you morally, which is the more important question. What does it do to an 18-year-old to tell him he's entitled to money? What does that do to his own drive, his own conception of the world? And I want to add, that is more important, because what 18-year-olds need, or 16-year-olds, or 20-year-olds, is a sense that they're on their own. That helps them to try. One of the fascinating people I've met in my life is Harrell, the energy king of Oklahoma. Mr. Ham had to do everything for himself. He got married very young. He had trouble finishing high school, and he went to college, but he barely had time because he had to earn money because he was married and his family didn't have a lot of money. He came from a poor family. And that energized him, and he became Harrell Ham. Continental Resources, right? A great big energy company, led the way in the energy revolution. I wonder what it would have been like if you had said to Harold, who's a smart man, here's $1,000 a month for you, and we'll pay for the college all the way, and we'll pay for the health care. Would he have had the energy to do something new? The same reason young men and women bust out, join the Army and Navy, even though their mother is quite concerned, is that need to show the world that one can support oneself, and that need is precious. So what do we do when we start these handout businesses? We undermine that need. We infantilize our children. We cause them to live in hotel parents the rest of their lives.
Wow.
We impair them. Sorry to be so bossy.
No. Amity, it's been a great time talking with you. Your book, again, Great Society, A New History. Amity Shalais, everybody. Amity, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning.
Oh, thank you.
All righty. We're going to make a video of this, put it up on conduitnews.com, share it. Get the book. Get the book. It was out November 26th. You can go to Amazon.com and get it right now. It would make a great Christmas present. Again, Great Society, A New History, Amity Shalais. Folks, we'll be back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
American businesses, movie studios, universities, think tanks, scholars, journalists, and local, state, and federal officials.
And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you, and specifically Senator Caldwell, Senator Ingram, Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell. These are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them and they're going to help you, guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, real quick, we have just going to go over a few of the things. If you missed the first hour of the program, John Brummett tweeting about the TalkBusiness.net article highlighting the governor, his son, and the legal business, Chinese firms, the communist Chinese firms, when the governor's law firm. We talked about that. Also, record revenue in the month of November for the state of Arkansas yet again. Internet sales tax was a part of that. We asked the question, why does Walmart, what do they have, why do they need the governor's law firm? They are a client of the governor's law firm. We find that interesting when they've got teams of lawyers, and we speculated maybe it had something to do with the internet sales tax. Who knows? Who knows? You know, they've been trying to get that passed for years. Also, there was a vote to rename a street for Martin Luther King in Jonesboro. That article, we talked about that. Trump's in NATO. We did not talk about Fox News' Tucker Carlson ripping vicious, quote, vicious, end quote, billionaire Paul Singer for vulture capitalism tactics. Did you guys see that? That was incredible. That was absolutely incredible. And you guys should look that one up if you haven't. Here is, well, I guess this isn't really a meme of the day. This is just more like a good message, something that we need to be reminded of. We'll post it up at the Twitter page at Conduit News, courtesy on Instagram of _conservative. Be the America Hong Kong thinks you are. Be the America Hong Kong thinks you are. Arkansas, thank you for listening. Be safe.